So SukaSuka, I guess. So Matt, you did our last rotational post. Well, you did our last episodic post for it, and you actually had a lot of really solid things to say about that last
Yeah,
episode.
dude, you had some great comments on that last episode.
Yeah, well, yeah, my post was awesome. I didn't want to start the podcast like that, but yeah, sure. Whatever. Yeah, well, like, and the last episode of SukaSuka was really something else. Like,
Yes, it was.
it was kind of like the first episode, as I mentioned. It does the whole dramatic thing. We talked about that in the last podcast, where it does the whole like dramatic romance thing. It's all about the characters, the story they're telling with them, you know, and it just brought that really dramatic, that heavy drama feel. And that is really what this show is really good at. Like, it's really good at the drama, and it's really good at intertwining the romance with the drama.
Yeah, it's like you get a lot of feels of like heartbreak, but there's also a nice tone of hope that kind of rings through, especially with the way that the music is interwoven into everything.
Yeah, it's very consistent in how it portrays its tone.
Yes.
Although the show itself isn't necessarily consistent in how it presents a lot of its narrative and a lot of the oomph of it,
No.
I will give it that it is consistent in its tone, if nothing else.
For me personally, I would say relatively. There were some times that I felt like it was kind of dropping the ball when it came to its tone. That it was trying to go a little too far into like comedy for the sake of comedy, or going too far into just a different direction. That it didn't. It felt like a slight tonal shift whenever all of a sudden another scene came up and like another event happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you kind of look at it, like episodes like 10 and 11 were kind of weird. Well, 10. Well, what was episode 10? That was the one where, let's see, number 9 was the one where they left.
Yeah, episode 10 was the one where Cathali kind of took charge of the expedition ship and, got all the soldiers into ship shape, and Willem found the that one.
The MacGuffin the sword kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They found the sword in the ruins, and
yeah,
right.
And then he asked for a hand in marriage.
Yeah,
is how they ended it. I thought that my voice cracked. I thought that was a pretty good. I thought it was a pretty good episode. Relatively, it was definitely one of the better ones in comparison to like the last few.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like when you were talking about the comedic, the kind of interwovenness, there was a lot of moments where and by moments I kind of mean like halves of the episode. There was a lot of times where I was just like, okay, and now what was the point? Like,
it's like, and why is this here?
Yeah, okay, that was
very much scenes
something
that you can just completely exclude, and you're literally missing nothing.
Like, I almost feel like this show could have been like a 6-episode OVA, and it would have done just as well.
It would have been better.
Man,
yeah,
oh hot shit, dude! You are getting me all misty.
Oh my gosh! If it had been a 6-episode OVA, this show would have been amazing. Just cut out the fat, hit everything that you have to hit. Don't worry about any of the bullshit about going around town, like
that was a bullshit
insulting
episode.
The mayor's daughter or whatever the fuck. Like, don't worry about any of that shit. Just cut out the fat and do a 6-episode series. This would have been fantastic.
Well, like, because Kyle, kind of in reference to that, like we talked about in some of our earlier posts for this, we were talking about. SukaSuka, it does this amazing job building this very lively, interesting world, and we were talking about like, man, this is so cool. I can't wait to see when they develop it more. And they didn't.
I know. It's like,
and it really killed me because, like, I mean, so for example, like I think it was episode 4 or something. Like they developed some shit with the Knights of Calamity or whatever the hell they called themselves.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh wow, this is really neat. Like, could this be some actual faction that's going to play into some more significant role later on? And then they're used as like a throwaway thing to show like how badass Willem is in a later episode or something like that. And
No,
I'm
it was
like,
the same episode.
Yeah, that was the same episode. That was 5, I think.
They wrapped everything up in the same episode. They
But-
introduced them,
but
and
it's
then
just
they
like-
and then they ended it.
and it's just like, you guys could have done something cool.
Yeah.
Like, what's the matter with you?
I think.
And so there were so many points in this show where they built up all of this lore
Mhm.
for essentially nothing, because as the show went on, you know, it kept sort of funneling just into like, okay, there's this world around here, but that world doesn't have anything to do with Willem and Cathali.
Right, and so
And-
they just stopped caring about it at that point, which I will say, because we defended this early on, in that like a lot of people online were upset because they were like, this turned into a slice of life, and I genuinely was actually, because they wanted to see all the action scenes, and I genuinely was actually okay with that for the most part, because I thought it was interesting what it was doing. It was avoiding the action scenes and instead focusing on the characters, and through the characters were able to explore the world, and they did a lot
Right,
of
yeah.
really good exposition just through dialogue, and it was well done because it came off as natural. It came off as like, it wasn't like, oh, you didn't know this, well, let me sit you down for a 30-minute talk about how this world works. It was
Yeah, and I
very
seriously don't. I don't have an issue with how it handled that.
right, but
like,
and
in
I think
context.
the issue that we have is that while they did all of that really well, and I'll still defend that point for the show, it's like you can have all this amazing stuff that's going on, and then it's like you can have all this wonderful dialogue going on, you can have all these amazing stuff that you're explaining away, but then if your characters don't do anything, like literally nothing at all, then you suddenly reach a point where the plot can no longer progress, and that
Yeah,
was
like
the issue.
You need to justify these choices you make. You have to contextualize this shit. Like, again, it doesn't matter how cool your world is if you don't actually develop it in any meaningful way that actually has any impact on the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
what's the point if you show there's all this cool stuff and then you show us like a square inch of it?
Right, and I think that is definitely one of the problems that SukaSuka had, as you guys mentioned. Interestingly enough, I was thinking about something while Kyle was talking. There's a lot of fantasy shows out there, and not just fantasy. There's a lot of shows in general that have these really cool settings that a lot of people might have complained about SukaSuka being a slice of life, but it's just more on that side of things, I guess, because there's plenty of other shows that have really cool worlds that don't ever get explored, and they focus on that action part as well.
Right.
Mhm.
They're too focused on the
So-
action that they don't explore what's going on around it. And I thought that and initially that was one of the strong points to this show. That instead of
Mhm.
focusing on the action, it was like, no, let's explore our characters and let's explore the world that our characters live in. But then they just slowed down and they just weren't doing anything.
Yeah, there were quite just like episode 5 we mentioned. I don't even know what the point of that episode was, besides
Oh, gosh.
to take Willem to exposition land with the old man. So
It was a season pass. Excellent.
yeah.
No, and that's totally fair. And I think that's why I would have loved to see this as the 6th episode OVA, because like we said, the middle of this show just starts bogging down real hard, and then you get to like you start to get hints of things in episode 9, but it's still a little wishy-washy, and then it gets to episode 10 and it's like, okay, well, that was at least a solid episode. Then episode 11, which I wrote about, I was very happy that I got that episode because a lot of shit happened, and for all the people that wanted the action finally happened, and it was just non-stop action for 23 minutes, or
Mhm.
about 18, give or take. And that was awesome, especially because as people were fighting, we kept on getting like we kept on shifting between all of our different characters because they're all separated now and they can't get back together. So it's like we keep switching between these different groups, and then while we're switching between these different groups, a lot of stuff is happening, and we keep on seeing all that rising and building tension to what was hinted at in episode 1, which is when our episode 12 comes in. Is the callback to episode 1. Now we see what actually occurs. And it was really good. And I was like, where the fuck was this the rest of the show? but I was just so happy to have it at that point. And then it comes into episode 12, Matt, that you discussed, and that was just a fantastic way to end the show.
Yeah, I know me and Zack were talking about after episode, what was it, 10? We were talking about episode 11, and we were actually really afraid that it wasn't going to end.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that we thought episode 11, it was going to show the thing that happened in episode 1, the thing they alluded to the whole time.
Yeah.
We were really afraid that it was going to pull that card in episode 11, and then episode 12 was going to be some kind of like
wrap-up episode or something like that.
Yeah, it was going to be something
some really weird, like calm after the storm kind of thing.
Yeah, and that would have
like,
done a disservice for this show.
Yeah.
So like I'm actually I'm astounded with how well the show ended out.
I'm kind of impressed.
I'm super pleased with it.
And it's like, I think 10 through 12, especially 12, definitely saved this show for me. Because it was getting to a point that we kept writing about the show every week, and I was getting a little tired of it. Because that middle just starts bogging down so hard. Yeah. And it wasn't that it was necessarily like atrocious or bad. It was just meh.
Stuff we've seen before.
Yeah.
It was just like, there was just this constant ebb and flow of quality. Like, you didn't know what you were going to get each week, because some weeks they were actually fairly decent episodes, and then other weeks it was like, that was a dumpster fire. Thanks for that, I guess.
Yeah.
And so it was such a fucking roller coaster ride, like trying to be like, okay, well, let's see what happens this week.
Yeah, and don't worry, I kind of felt like that way from, I guess it was about episode 6, and I was just like, oh no, I don't like this. This is not going down a good road. But ended out pretty good, so I'm okay with that.
I'm very happy with how things ended with the show. And to be fair, I in the end I did enjoy this show, and I probably would recommend it for people to watch, just with the preface that it bogs down real hard in the middle. But if you hold on till the end, when you get to the end, it makes it worth it, I think.
Yeah, it takes some patience.
Yeah.
But
I think
if you're not a patient person, you probably won't make it past the middle parts.
That being said, though, like,
there's plenty of other shows you can watch, sure, but if you want to give this one a shot, I'd say in the end it's worth it.
Overall, like, I definitely do recommend still giving it a go, because all bullshit aside, it is still actually one of the more solid series from this season.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to think. I don't even remember what the fuck aired this season.
Well, that's
what this podcast is for, Matt. What do you know?
Like, here's the thing.
Excellent.
I wasn't going to say that the bar wasn't very high, but I mean, the bar wasn't super high. There wasn't a whole lot that really struck me this season.
Well, I think that's a little unfair, because to be honest, if you go back and you look at the season, there's plenty of stuff that we could have clearly talked about. Like, everybody and their mother was talking about Boku no Hero Academia 2, but Zack, you're probably the only person that was following that, because we haven't seen season 1.
Yeah.
So we
had to skip out on that.
Yeah.
That was unfortunate.
But then, while there was also a lot
It's
of
so
like
good.
just okay shows, I mean, there were still recreators, which apparently was great. I'm gonna be honest, I haven't gotten started on it.
Still going.
Yeah, and that becomes the issue, is that a lot of the shows that we could talk about, they're still going, and they're gonna wrap up in the spring. So should we really talk about a ton of them, or should we wait until wait for the spring to talk about them whenever we can start seeing a lot more of the show?
Because man, oh man, do I want to talk about Sakura Quest.
Yes,
we're
absolutely.
getting to-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that show, my God.
Not caught up, but oh man, I should catch up actually because
it's
looks like I'm
it's so fun.
Yeah, and I do
God,
agree
that
with you
show.
that there was a lot of shows that came out that I watched like a few episodes of, and it was just meh. There was a lot of shows that I felt were like that, but there were also some pretty good gems. It's just a lot of the pretty good gems are like 24, 26 episodes.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
that was kind of the bad thing. And like, let's see. Oh, there was Shingeki no Kyojin, but again,
Yeah.
some of us had not watched that at that point. I think I only finished the show when it was like on episode 8.
Oh, that's
So,
right. Yeah, you watched through season 1 fairly recently.
Yeah, I went through that pretty fast. But I didn't get around season 2. Like, there's a Centric Family season 2 we didn't get to because we couldn't talk about that at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, there was just tons of shows like that.
Yeah, like that's the thing. When I say there wasn't a whole lot to watch this season, the bar wasn't very high.
There's
What
not
I
a
hate
lot
is-
of new shows, I think is what you were trying to say. Or,
fair.
There's not a lot of self-contained stuff that you can go
yeah,
into.
that's the word.
Yeah.
That's either like there's not a lot of stuff that is just this season and that isn't a sequel.
Right.
And so it makes it harder to talk about it in like just a singular podcast about like, hey, this is what aired this season.
Right.
But there's still some good gems out there. Awkwardly, there were also some other shows that we did watch that were not so gem worthy.
Well, the good news is that nobody talked about Dungeon after like episode 3, so that kind of just fell off the face of the planet.
I thought that was such a good idea for a show, though. Is that the fact that you take the original story, but then you take it from somebody else's perspective? That's neat.
I don't know. I guess people got bored of it.
I that is one show that I don't feel guilty for not watching.
I mean, to
or
be fair,
being completely out of the loop of.
Matt and I watched the first season, and you're not missing a damn thing.
I made a conscious decision.
Have you seen Sword Art Online? It's nothing like Sword Art Online, but you shouldn't watch either of those shows. So.
Damn. Okay.
Oh, God.
All right.
So, what do you want to talk about next? Just Eromanga?
Well, let's just talk about this.
I just want to approach it so that we can go ahead and talk about it, because I really want to talk about like the show that I watched this season, but I want to end on a high note because Eromanga is not going to be a high note.
Oh wow! All right.
I mean, like, okay, look.
Where do you start with this? Okay, well, Eromanga was a show.
A spiritual successor to Remo from the same author.
Yeah. It was not as bad as I thought it was going to be,
People
but I still...
were so upset about this show this season.
My
I think
God, there were people that dropped it on episode 1. And
Okay, well, look, when you have that kind of pedigree, where, like, it's basically the sequel to Aremo, like, not really sequel, but, I mean, that's how people are approaching it, almost. Like, it's a successor to Aremo. When you have that kind of, like, pressure on you, I mean, yeah, it's kind of nuts. It doesn't help that it wasn't a great show, but
well, before we get into that, I actually want to talk about something interesting with Eromanga. It's kind of interesting that everyone loved Aremo, and then Eromange-sensei came out, and everybody instantly hated it. What's up with that?
Instantly hated Eromanga, or instantly hated both Eromanga and Aremo?
I guess people already hated Aremo after the ending.
Yeah,
so.
To be fair, it's like when Aremo aired, it seemed like people enjoyed it, but then like many people who saw the show, they saw the ending, and they were like, "No, this is not a good show."
Yeah, I think people are a little still mad.
It was like the Mass Effect 3 mentality, where it's like the entirety of the game was fantastic, but then you get to the ending, and people were so upset about the ending that they just forgot about the rest of the game.
It's like it completely invalidates everything that it did beforehand.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, to be honest, that was a real fucking shit ending to a Rainbow.
God, don't get me started.
But, man, we could have a separate podcast on that in of itself. But
you're picking a scab off there, man. Just
that's isn't that what Eromanga felt like the whole time, though? Like,
yeah, okay. Well, no. Eromanga felt like picking a scab off for entirely different reasons.
Okay. Well, so
maybe
we talked about it.
Maybe we should talk about like what exactly.
No, hold on. Matt, we talked about
Eromanga a little bit in the last podcast, the last seasonal one we did. We talked a little bit about it. We talked a little bit about people's opinions and how there was a lot of hate for the show, kind of like what we just talked about. And then there's also like weird parts of the community that like also really like the show.
I think they're the strange parts of the community that, and I don't want to like necessarily attack or generalize anybody here, but it's like there is definitely a decent amount of people that, you know, will find a show that has a cute art style with a cute character, and they'll kind of just really stick to that.
Yeah, and I mean that's fine. Like whatever. I
mean that's anime.
Yeah,
yeah, I guess so.
Come on.
I mean, it doesn't even matter. It could literally be any show, and people do that too.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
But I just think it's interesting that coming into this show had a lot of baggage, I guess.
Oh, that's a good way to put that. Yeah.
I think so, because Remo had both, you know, when you look at like just the first season of Remo or something like that, it's like that was honestly genuinely enjoyable. And it didn't really get into any of the like super weird incesty stuff that it did later in the first season. It was only like slight, and if then you could have easily explained it away as just, you know, the brother and sister are close, but they're not that close. But then you see the second season, you're like, okay, never mind, they are that close. But like, the first season itself of Aremo was actually a pretty decent show.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, and I liked a lot of what it did. I liked a lot of the discussion that it had. That was pretty intelligent about, you know, otaku culture, the problems with otaku culture, and how, you know, if people find out that you are an otaku, it can definitely ruin your life in a lot of people's eyes, because they suddenly have lost complete respect for you. And then there was also a little bit of celebration of, like, you know, some of the more interesting things about otaku culture. That might call to specific people. And for people that are nerdy and are into that stuff, I thought that was a good show for them, especially because it did dissect that a little bit, while also interweaving, you know, some fun characters and a little bit of a brother-sister bonding thing. Because in the first season, that's what it was. They hated each other, and then by the end of it, they learned that actually they're all right. And I thought that was really well done. And I think that's kind of the... Just comparing that to Eromanga-sensei, that's kind of the issue, is that Eromanga-sensei is just not that show. And maybe that's what a lot of people wanted, is one that's a little bit that is a little bit deeper than just skin surface. And I think that's kind of one of the issues, is that Eromanga-sensei, as far as plot, is fucking basic. It's just a slice of life with some romancy, harem-y stuff in it.
Yeah, and so that's the thing, like, Matt, where you talk about, you know, it's coming in with a whole lot of baggage to it. You know, I almost feel as though it's hardly fair to the show itself to put it up to those kinds of expectations that people had for it.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you know, these are two shows that are trying to accomplish very different things. I feel like, you know, Eromange-sensei and Aremo both tackle very different topics and ideas, aside from, you know, the taboo brother sister romance stuff, which really isn't, all things considered, tackled too much in the show proper.
No.
But
yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Eromanga doesn't have much of a plot as it is.
Right.
So
It's more
the plot
like,
was resolved after episode 3.
And
Yeah,
that kind of
and
becomes
the
an
rest
issue
is-
too. Yeah.
yeah, like the rest from there on is like it acts as a vehicle for
Shenanigans.
pretty much, and they're not even very entertaining shenanigans.
They're not cheeky or fun. They're cruel and tragic. Sorry.
Yeah.
Like it's a lot of time they're massively uncomfortable to watch.
Oh gosh, yes.
Like there were times when I was sitting, in my own apartment, like watching this show, and I'm just like, oh my god, I need to like throw my computer in the river because the feds are gonna bust down my door or something.
Holy fuck! I was so glad I was not
Like-
watching this show. Like, 'cause I tend to spend a lot of time watching anime outside of my home. I was so glad I waited because there is no way, no possible way to explain what I'm watching to somebody else. Just ugh. But like, and I think another issue that the show had is that, like, yeah, it was they wanted to do shenanigans, and that became evident to me whenever they completely skipped the ending of, well, almost completely skipped the ending of the first light novel book. Yeah. So
yeah,
the way
okay, talk about this.
because I did read the light novels and I did read the manga before I saw this. So both the manga and the light novel, the manga kind of does something similar, but to the anime, but they still try a little bit. But in the light novel, when he enters in the competition, it's a big deal, because it's going to be a situation in which if he fails the competition, they're going to get kicked out of the house and split apart. And they kind of push that drama a little bit, and he has to work really hard for it. And so, like, they actually had, it wasn't major, and it wasn't like dedicated like several chapters, but there was definitely at least like half a chapter dedicated to just him sitting there writing it and making sure that it's good. And there was a lot of drama there and a lot of suspense build up until he gets the results. And then when he finally does get the results, in the anime, what happens is he smiles and he runs off and he tells his little sister. In the light novel, he realizes he lost, and they emphasize that. They're like, "Oh fuck, he lost." And then what happens is that they find out after he has this freak out that first place was actually not allowed. First place was suspended or whatever.
Disqualified.
Thank you. They were disqualified because they wrote too much. And then at that point, it's a slow relief that he suddenly realizes, no, they can live together as a family. And then he runs up to tell her about it. It's like they just completely skipped that. In this, he just looks at it, he smiles, and says, "Yay!" And then he goes up and tells his sister, and it's like, where was the drama? Like, what happened?
That's really interesting.
I don't know why they did that.
That I mean, a lot of people made fun of that episode because they said it was a tournament arc in one episode.
Yeah, and that's how it felt from like, and granted, the book doesn't. It's like he enters in the tournament, and then like a chapter or two later, he completes the tournament because it's the end of the book.
It would have been like 2 episodes,
right?
normally.
Yeah, it's not that long in the book, but there was still emphasis put on the fact that no, this is serious. This is drama. It's mild, but it is still drama, and then the anime just doesn't do it.
So I guess my question is, does the light novel itself put a lot more emphasis on dramatic aspects of it? Like, does it feel as though things are taken with a lot more gravity than the anime?
Specific things are. And I think you can kind of feel that whenever all of a sudden it has those tonal shifts when he starts talking about his mom died and shit like that. It's like it comes out of nowhere too, because they're literally joking. And it's like, haha, my mom died. It's like,
oh my god,
Jesus! This is the second podcast in a row where where you specifically have made a joke like that.
But it's okay, but it's true. That's literally what happened in the episode. The other one was a hyperbolization in order to get my my point across. This literally happened in the episode.
I know.
But yeah, no, you can tell that there's a bit of a tonal shift there. In the light novel, it's because it's from an inner perspective and he's inner monologuing a lot of it. There is a lot of moments in which outwardly he's approaching things with the same tone that you find in the anime. It's lighthearted, it's happy, there's a lot of comedy, tons of references, way more than what they actually show in the show. Mm-hmm. I did appreciate the Dengeki Buko reference that they made, where Elf Yamada was just like, I'm just gonna topple all of those, and then they show like Sword Art Online and a couple of other major light novels. A lot of those jokes do come across, but the inner monologue that he is constantly thinking about, not only do I want this family, I need to keep this family. And it never gets too serious, it never gets too like dramatic, but it feels like the anime just decided to kind of skip over that a little bit and just focus on, okay, well, here's the story, here's some fun stuff that's happening, shenanigans, okay, a little bit of drama, let's get back to shenanigans.
Yeah, that's interesting. I kind of don't like that approach, but
no,
yeah,
they did what they did.
And I think the main reason why I don't like it is because it cheapens the feel of it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because you never feel like there's any danger to them in the anime whatsoever.
Yeah, it's just
there's no
risk.
Insubstantial.
And because of
like
that,
if you
no
hurts,
stakes.
Yeah, because of that, it hurts the story. What little story we have is being hurt.
Yeah, well, and especially like, again, I say it's unfair to compare it to Aremo, but if we're going to compare it to Aremo, like there are parts, within that where it does feel like there is some genuine stakes to it. Like there are parts where I am genuinely concerned for, some of the, potential emotional well-beings for, a lot of these characters at stake. And so
she moves away. You have her before that. You have the sister. You have her best friend realize that she's Taku, and then just fucking hates her. You have some genuine moments there, but this show just didn't have any of that.
When there is no real stakes set up, it just feels like, I don't know, it kind of cheapens it. But again, you can make the argument, why should you have these kind of stakes in what's essentially, a silly rom-com or slice of life, whatever.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like when I hear an argument like that, I kind of want to point them towards things like what we just covered, Hanazuka Iroha, which blended that those rom-com slice of life elements with some drama, with some really good story. And it just comes down to, it's like one's well written, the other one not so much, I guess, as far as the anime goes.
Yeah, maybe when that's a completely different discussion, I guess altogether. Is I have no idea who wrote that. I mean, I know who the writer is, but did the anime as well?
I don't know. I can check that for you though. But yeah, it's a thing in which like it just wasn't as good as it could be, and we haven't even covered the elephant in the room here as far as like one of the main issue with this show that we all had, that we talked about outside the podcast, which was just the blatant sexualization of children.
Okay, before we talk about that, let's talk about how this show was an ecchi and it didn't really have to be.
Hey, this show was an ecchi. It doesn't have an ecchi tag.
Yeah, and just because it says Eromanga in the title doesn't mean it has to be erotic.
It also has drama as one of its tags, which is just not correct at all.
That's laughable. But
that's
Matt,
funny.
Anyway.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, like, did this show really need the ecchi tag at all?
No.
Like,
no. See,
well, okay. Here's the thing.
Like, it doesn't have a tag, but did it really need that?
Here's the thing, like this show could have very easily been the exact same show, but there would have been no need for like there is just by nature of the plot, some necessity for there to be some sense of eroticism in it, just because they're
Right.
writing mangas,
It's
and
written
like
into the
novels and
plot
such.
that there is some, and I
Yeah.
think anything that might surround like, hey, look, here's my drawing, that would be fine. But
Yeah,
all the
and
stuff
that's
outside
the
of
thing.
that,
Like it's fine, but like we don't have to get like just a bunch of panty shots and just incredibly like very awkwardly lewd scenarios with these other characters. Like it doesn't actually add anything to the plot
no,
at all.
none
It's
whatsoever.
not necessary. It doesn't need to be done. Like you could have very easily, Matt, like you say, like we could have had this exact same story pretty much without having this ecchi tag associated with it necessarily.
Also interesting that you bring up the erotic art that she draws. It's
Mhm.
not even drawn by someone that does erotic art
Really?
normally.
Huh.
It's done by the Masamune-kun art person.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, the person that did all of the character designs for Arima and stuff.
No, I'm
No,
talking about the
Masamune-kun
actual
No
art that
Revenge.
Eromanga draws.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's done by the Masamune-kun manga
No.
artist.
oh, okay.
Masamune-kun No Revenge.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I know.
Oh,
which
yeah,
one
I
it
forgot
is.
the character's
Yeah,
name's
his name is
Masamune.
Masamune.
You were confusing me
Oh.
there.
That's confusing. I apologize.
Easily mistaken.
That was confusing. Wow.
Yeah, and it's a twofold thing. It's one, it's a ton of sexualization of underage children, which is just fucked up, plain and simple, fucked up. Two, it's so unnecessary. It's so horribly unnecessary. It reminds me a lot of whenever I was watching through Dungeon. That Dungeon didn't have an edgy tag either, but almost every other scene there was a shot that was either up a girl's skirt, looking down at her boobs, or something like that, and I'm like, this is completely unnecessary. Not only is it just not only does it not make any sense as far as like what's going on in the scene, it's just bad cinematography. But then on top of this, it's like this show tries to explain it away, and no, it just doesn't work. It's unnecessary. You could remove almost every single one of those scenes, and the show would work perfectly fine.
Pretty much.
Yeah. And I mean, there's so many instances. I mean, I almost live tweeted the thing every single week, and it was just uncanny about how many times I was just like, another one of these scenes. This is like, and it's just the same shit.
Yeah,
Like it was
like
panty shots over and over again. I'm like, this is literally the same angle. I've seen this girl's panties probably 20 times. I
And
don't
it's
need to
so-
see
Yeah,
anymore.
And
it's
there's
so
no
physically uncomfortable because you also know the girl's age, and you're like, this is fucked up. I don't want to watch this.
It's just
Yeah.
oh,
it's completely unnecessary, and it made watching this such a slog for me.
it-
Yeah, I even mentioned this before the podcast. There were moments in which I just
contributed to
yeah.
make this a slog for me.
There were moments that like while I was watching this, that all of a sudden it would go to one of these scenes, and I would just be like, "Well, this is gonna go on in the background." Meanwhile, I'm gonna check my email. I'm just not even gonna watch.
I mean, and I can't even argue against that because I mean, it was just awful. Like I was watching it and I was just like, what? This is dumb.
Yeah.
Like I never like ecchi anime don't even do this. Like what was even happening? Like it
Well,
was
okay, let's not make a broad generalization about ecchi anime because I can assure you.
well, okay, I'm sure there are some, but like we've seen some of the things that get tagged with ecchi.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like,
Look,
what?
obviously, like High School of the Dead can get away with stupid shit
Oh
because
my fucking gosh.
it's so fucking dumb. But I mean, it's just, I don't know. There's like not really any real excuse for Eromangas
No.
in that sense.
Yeah. That becomes the issue.
Yeah.
And it's not like having an excuse for it really would make it better necessarily.
No.
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 Like
No.
I'm not trying to say like
I-
if it checked off these boxes it would be acceptable. I'm just
Yeah, I don't think there's any way for it to be acceptable from the start.
Yeah, and it's like, even if these characters, here's the thing, even if these characters were like 21, 25, they were adults, and then we suddenly find them in haha goofy sexual shenanigans, it still would be a bad idea. It's just
like,
not
yeah.
good content.
I still would not want to watch.
Yeah, I still wouldn't watch the show. Like, I still would not like any of it. Like, if it had the same directing style, and on those, I don't even know what to call it, voyeuristic.
Voyeuristic, I think, is a good way to put it, but it's also like almost exhibitionist of the characters as well. It's just bad. It's badly written, and this is not necessarily entirely the fault of the anime because they are adapting content that is straight from the manga, straight from the light novel. These scenarios and situations are in those as well.
Yeah, and I understand that to an extent, like, but we don't need to add to that feel, I guess.
And that becomes the issue, is that, like, I was thinking about this whenever I read through the light novel. A lot of the stuff that was going on, it didn't really faze me as badly, I guess because I just wasn't picturing it that much in my mind. But then whenever I sit down and watch the show, and maybe that's just poor imagination on my part, but then I sit down and watch the show, and the camera is forcing me to watch it, to look at these things. And I think that becomes the issue, is that, like, the content itself is bad, but then the way that the camera frames it is just makes it so much worse.
Yeah, like it's really terrible shit. It's incredibly lazy by trying to use this as like a substitute for actual substantial content in it, and it's just, I mean, you know, it doesn't matter how many panty shots or whatever you have in a show, like, if you don't have anything that really contributes to a substantial, like, entertaining plot that stands on its own, like, who fucking cares?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what made...
I mean, you'll probably sell Blu-ray copies, so good on you for that, but
yeah,
like, woohoo.
I mean, honestly, that's kind of what made the two different cameos of the Aremo characters in this show feel like gut punches rather than callbacks. It's just like, it's like, I see they had the one in which, like, Sagiri's at home on her own, and then she watches, and what's her name, the black-haired girl from Aremo,
Kuroneko.
Kuroneko, thank you. Kuroneko's on TV with her two sisters, and it was like a nice little sweet scene or whatever. It's like, I saw that, and then I saw like the full, like, 30-second, which was unnecessary, but the 30-second callback to Aremo in which like Kirino has his book, and then they're walking through and they pass by this character, and like even Kyosuke looks over his shoulder at the author. It's just like, it went on for way too long, but like those two scenes combined, it almost felt like the show was saying, haha, guess what you could be watching instead of this.
The whole time I saw that really elongated scene with Kyosuke and the gang, I was just thinking, I'm like, that didn't happen in Aremo. And I was trying to like line up this world canon that I was creating, and I was like, this is not making any sense.
Oh, you were trying to align the timelines.
Yeah, I was trying to. It just wasn't connecting.
I guess you can assume that it happened at some point, like in the middle of the series or something like that.
That feels like such a cop-out, though. They should have planned ahead.
Like someone demailed that shit back, and it's like, okay, well, this happens now, so.
Yeah.
Dang. I don't know. Anyways.
Well.
Anyways, that's a Eromange-sensei.
I mean, well, hold on.
Okay.
I mean, we kind of already talked about Eromange a lot. Nobody brought up episode 6.
What was episode 6 again?
The sexual harassment. I mean, there's a lot of it in the show, so I can't.
Oh, that exploded on Twitter. Yeah.
I don't know what more we can really talk about it.
I mean, honestly, at this point, we would just be beating a dead horse because that's just bringing up a specific great example of what's wrong with this show.
Yeah. There
Because
you go.
yeah, they tie a
Like,
girl up,
I
they pull
mean-
her panties off, she cries, and it's a terrible. And they try to throw it off as the comedy when it's just fucking disgusting.
It was horrible.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Um,
it's really, really
it's
just.
no, it's just not right. And once again, it's especially not right given that you see that and then you think about it and you're like, oh right, these are underage fucking children. It's just disgusting. It's not right at all. And I think we're just kind of beating a dead horse there.
Yeah.
It's,
I mean,
but no,
I just
it
wanted
is.
to-
Yeah.
That example was really relevant because a lot of people got really mad about
Yes,
that.
I
so-
remember.
Yeah.
I remember when that episode came out on Twitter, people fucking exploded, and justifiably so.
Yeah.
Like, you
I
could,
can't even think of who thought that was a good idea.
You
but-
can.
Yeah, because I remember, because Matt, you were the first of us to watch that, and
Yeah.
like you just tossed it into our Slack, and it's like, guys, what
What
the
the fuck?
fuck? And then we see this, and we're like, what the fuck?
It's
And
like
it's
I
just-
kind of knew a little bit of it because I've seen the previous. It is in the light novel and the manga as well. It's
Like,
actually
it's-
framed, almost frame for frame with the manga, I think. But yeah, no, I mean,
Like it's absolutely unfathomable.
yeah,
Like, in what universe do like what fucking meeting are you in where it's like, okay, well, we came up with this scene. It's like, oh yeah.
it must
this
have
is
been
ex-
very necessary for the light novel author because it's one of the insert illustrations in the light novel. One of like the 3.
Oh Christ,
Yep.
man.
Oh, he must have wanted it in then.
He must have wanted it in.
Great.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And no, I think it's good to bring that up because, to be
Yeah.
honest, this entire show is a wonderful example of what not to do as far as sexualization in your show goes, and especially as far as like check the fucking age of the characters that you're working with.
Yeah,
'Cause
like, hey,
this
let's
is-
not sexualize kids.
Yes.
That's a novel
Yeah.
fucking idea.
Mhm.
Fuck,
Yeah.
it's just wrong. But
Well,
yeah,
what actually makes this even worse, just in my mind, is the fact that the show actually has halfway decent character animation sometimes.
oh my gosh, I will say this.
know.
I will say this. It's the final episode. Yes, it's the final episode when they have that whole stupid plot point about like, hey, your novel's a success. Someone made a doujinshi of your novel. All of the animation of Sagiri like raging because she wants to read the doujinshi and like all that other stuff. It's so well animated to be perfectly cute. But it's like, and then there's other moments in which there's some really good and pretty good animation, but it's just not in the right show.
I know.
like the show-
That's the disappointment.
Yeah, like it really is. It's a good looking show, like from a visual standpoint.
Yeah, and I will say I've always been a huge fan of
It's
the
just-
character artist. He also worked on the second season of Erica 7 AO, and he does
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Actually,
and he does a
Okay.
really good job of
That's good.
making like I don't know how you would even say it. They're just like squishy. It's like they're
oh, please don't say that.
okay. It's a little bit of an awkward statement, but like they're just like I don't know. They're rounded heads and like a cute
They're
persona.
soft.
Yeah, but even that's not really a
That's
proper
also such a
term.
bad word.
I don't know.
It was better than squishy.
He makes a morphic, I guess. He can do a lot with characters that are able to be more expressive, and they, I don't know, the character design itself. This is a fucking terrible detail.
You can tell none of us have
Yeah.
like majored in art.
They,
Look,
they
the
really
char-
have a they really have a good optic feel to them.
Anyways,
Okay.
They're real
I
sweet.
like the character designs. He does really good with cute character designs, and I've always appreciated that from that author, or from that artist. But like, it's once again, it's just I don't want to watch the show.
Content's
like-
bad, show's bad.
Yeah.
I can't recommend this.
Yeah.
It's like, why did you have to put Muramasa in this show? Like, what's the matter with you? She could have been good in another show.
Most of the characters could have been better in another show.
Yeah. No, yeah.
Yeah. Like, why did it have to be this one?
Sagiri is shit. I just had to throw that out there.
You're not wrong.
Anyways, why don't we move on to
all right,
happier
we're
subject?
done now.
Yeah,
we're done.
We have
all
to
right,
step
we've
back.
exhausted that topic.
We've
that
drawn
was-
and quartered this thing.
Okay. Hey, Zach, I'm actually massively interested in what you watched this season.
Let's watch some.
Okay.
What is it? Let's go.
Okay, so I watched Seikaisuru Kado.
Yes, you did.
Man, so I have to tell you guys, I was immediately drawn to Seikaisuru Kado when I at the time Annie Chart had described it as it was an experiment by Toei Animation with 3D CG.
Yes.
And and as you may recall,
I don't think.
last season, I went out on a limb to check out
Another 3D experiment?
another 3D CG experiment, Handshakers.
Oh no, you had to name drop it. Everybody should have just known.
I don't care at this point. I'm going to use it as a cautionary tale every time I can. Now, the nice thing about Seikaisuru Kado is it wasn't fucking ass garbage.
Unlike the other show.
Oh my god, I was super pleasantly surprised. Except it did get real weird at the end. I will give it that. This show, I won't say it went places I didn't expect it to, but it went places that I expected it to in ways that I didn't expect it to get there.
Interesting.
The really odd thing about this show is they released a single episode OVA of Seikaisuru Kado, before the anime itself came out. Seikaisuru Kado Ninovo. And it is entirely just traditional 2D animation.
Really?
So I was a little confused when I was watching that, and I'm thinking, Toei Animation's not doing a whole lot of 3D CG experimentation in this. But so like the basic gist of Seikaisuru Kado is this our main character Kojo Shindo. He's a government negotiator for a bunch of different things. He has an absolute stellar reputation for, like, if you need someone to negotiate something, he's your guy. And the first episode, the OVA really does a good job of this because it shows him like negotiating with the business and a government and doing a back and forth between. And it was this really, really cool, single episode thing of like, this is a really neat, like, business centric anime episode. Like, it shows all the ins and outs of, like, talking about, production costs, things of this nature, like going back and forth and saying, what does this company need? What kind of profits can we pull out from it, etc. And it was such a neat idea. And then we get alien shit from the first proper episode. And it was a really odd shift. Because throughout the rest of the series, it felt like there was a lot less of a focus of that kind of concentrated negotiation that we got out of that first OVA. And so I guess throughout the rest of the series, I was a little disappointed that it never quite got back to that.
Oh, really?
Like, just a little bit, but not so much that I didn't enjoy the show itself. The show proper deals with, there is this extra dimensional life form that comes to Japan in this giant rainbow cube.
He's a Borg. Okay.
And basically his general purpose, He's come to Earth to advance mankind. He has several devices he's brought to Earth. I guess spoilers if you want to watch the show, but one set of devices is providing infinite amounts of energy. One device expands the human consciousness, making it so that you don't have to sleep to live at all. And the third device acts as a sort of control device for the universe, so to speak. You can it's initially used to, like, alter gravitational forces, things like that, but it's basically described as this thing to where, like, you can rewrite the settings of reality, which
It seems like we jumped a little bit from not being able to sleep.
Yeah. And that it's a really interesting progression, because I genuinely really enjoyed it, probably about the first half of this series, because it was genuinely interesting, because it was just this focus on, holy shit, like, this alien life form has come out of nowhere and is slowly it's speaking with government officials, giving these first few things to mankind. And it's really interesting kind of seeing this slow progression, because there's a lot of discussion, like, when this first gift of, like, unlimited energy keeps going, like, there's this whole worldwide press conference, and then the UN is like, well, shit, we can't let Japan just have all of these, unlimited energy devices. And so there's a lot of negotiation in that sense. And it's really interesting approaching it from the angle of, well, what would happen if there was, this extraterrestrial contact? Like, how would the nations of Earth, like, deal with this stuff? And it's really cool. But then it gets more into some more philosophical discussions as it goes on. And
okay.
I don't know, like, it's really interesting initially, and it still is interesting at the end, but it
went off the rails.
It really did, and not in a way that was immensely satisfying and entertaining.
Was that because, like, the execution was bad, or was it just because, like, the story wasn't, like, written fluidly, or was it just because of the story itself or the nature of it?
Well, no. So, like, the delivery is always, like, fairly consistent, because even if the story itself was kind of around the end, the show itself did a really solid job of consistent development of characterization for its cast. I always felt like I was learning some new facet about the characters, or I was seeing how they were very much sticking to their guns when they were put up against some serious conflict. I feel like it did a really nice job of working with its characters. But yeah, the story just kind of went off the rails, and it was just, I don't know, it felt like it deviated a lot from the kind of political intrigue that the show started off with. Like, I was far more interested in a show about negotiating politically with this highly advanced life form, and that was what interested me so much. And then it turned into a well, what is this life form's ulterior motives? And that was immensely less interesting to me, because it quickly went from something kind of novel and neat to something pretty predictable.
Okay. All right. I kind of grasp it a little bit now.
Yeah.
Okay.
In a similar way, that was actually what I found so novel and fun about Arrival as a comparison. I doubt you guys have seen the movie, have you?
No.
But
no.
It's a similar concept in which, just out of the blue, aliens come down and they want something, and it's genuinely, it seems to be to the benefit of humanity, but we're not sure. but it's all about not only in a sorts negotiating with them, but the entire movie is about language and about how do these two species talk? How could we talk? And what does that mean? Directing that back to us, what does the difference between language mean as far as humanity? And it seems like that's what the show could have been. It could have been a thing in which, here's negotiation and all this interesting intrigue about negotiation and negotiating with aliens. And in doing so, what does that mean about us humans?
Yeah, and so I mean, like beyond that, like there were so many interesting avenues that they could have, gone with some of these devices. Like, I mean, when they introduced, the thing that makes it so humans don't have to sleep, I'm like, oh my god, I can't wait to see how they tackle, how this, affects, everything pretty much. Like when human beings no longer have to sleep, that, completely affects, well, what is the set work cycle now? Like you're going to have fucking 16-hour work days and things of that nature. Like that's going to completely change, because like they talk about, oh my god, human beings can be more efficient with this. And I'm like, okay, yeah, a higher efficiency and all this jazz leads to, longer work times. It completely changes how Earth and life and work is like defined and functions. I'm like, this is going to be so cool. And they didn't really do anything with it. I'm like, that's such a wasted potential.
I know. I mean, fuck, they could have gone over like a lot of the issues that we have now of just like class struggles. If we no longer have to sleep, then all of a sudden the maximum amount of hours that we have to work each week suddenly increases and increases. Are we then getting tired? And then all the dynamic between the poor and the rich that you could really delve into, because humans are given a gift and then all of a sudden we abuse the gift. That could have been cool.
and so that's the thing. Like, I still think the show is really solid. I still think it does an awesome job characterizing its its cast of characters. I still think the story for what we got was interesting, although it was a little odd with its pacing the last few episodes, all things considered. But overall, like, definitely a neat show. I guess I should talk about the animation. It's kind of jarring in that it's not entirely 3D CG.
Is it like one of those things where they paint over the 3D models with like 2D?
No. So we have these 3D CG models.
And I've seen some pictures. It's kind of weird.
And then we'll also have entirely drawn 2D characters right next to them.
What?
In the same scene.
That's weird.
Is this like the reversal of like how all the background characters are 3D models? Is it like the background characters now are 2D?
No. Like, we're talking about, there are foregrounded characters. Like, you will have two characters in conversation, and one will be a 3D model, and one will be a 2D sketch.
That's weird.
Why would they do that?
It's so bizarre. It's such an odd choice. Like, I don't, it's not the right choice. I just, it's absolutely mind-boggling why they decided to do that, because it's just so jarring, because like we have two completely different styles here. Like, I mean, it's clear they're done by the same character designer and animator and things of that nature, but it's like, why would you put a 3D and a 2D character just like right there like that?
Is it consistent with who is specifically 2D?
Well, and so here's the thing. Like, it's like a lot of the main cast is usually the ones that are put as the 3D models, and there are some supporting characters that are often 3D models as well. But then, sometimes the main cast is just 2D, and sometimes some supporting characters are just 2D. Like, it's usually pretty consistent, but it still doesn't make it any less.
Is there any rhyme or reason for when they're 2D and 3D?
Not really, no.
Yeah, because I was trying to think if it was something like if it's a faraway shot so they can get away with a little less detail on the 2D model, or...
Like, I mean, they occasionally do that here and there, but I mean, for the vast majority of the show, like, they keep the main cast as these like 3D CG models, whereas they keep a lot of the less important characters and things of that nature kind of just 2D. Like
this is interesting on a base level.
Are they
Yeah,
actually animated 2D, or are they just still images?
Oh no, they're animated 2D.
Oh,
Like,
I'm so confused.
yeah, I
This
know.
is interesting.
Like it's not as though you just have stills. It's like one studio's like, okay, here, make a traditional anime, like a traditionally animated 2D sort of thing, and then they had this other team doing, okay, here, make a complete 3D CG anime, and it's like, okay, we're going to take these 3D assets and plop them onto this 2D environment with 2D characters. Like it's just bizarre.
That's interesting, but yeah, that is definitely weird.
Bizarre.
Here's a question. What did you think about? Because you did say that some parts of the OVA in the first episode like overlapped. Is that what I'm understanding that correctly? Or
well, okay, so the OVA takes place. It's a completely 2D affair, and then there's about the last minute of the OVA leads into the beginning of the first episode.
Okay. And what did you think of the 3D versus the 2D in that overlap? What was better in your mind?
Well, so like,
I mean, obviously that's preference, but.
And here's the thing: as much as I say like it's an absolutely bizarre choice, it didn't actually really affect my viewing of the show.
Okay.
Because while it was kind of jarring, I honestly have to say, like it still kept my attention. Like it was only really distracting initially while I was trying to fathom, why have you done this?
One of those things where you just kind of get used to it.
Well, kind of, yeah, but it's not as though like it was like, oh man, this is garbage, I guess I'm just going to get used to it. Like I got to a point where I was like, this is actually really interesting. Like I was actually genuinely fascinated by it. And I feel like they pulled it off well because a lot of the character designs were very like simple, and they're like, it's not as though it's kind of like, and I hate to invoke its name twice, but it's not like it's like Handshakers where you're trying to do a lot of these very intense, like graphically intensive action scenes.
Yeah.
Like it's a lot of, this is a very dialogue heavy show.
So it's more subdued.
It's a lot of conversation, so it's definitely there, but it's not doing anything extreme. So
you're getting your business gestures, but you're not exactly getting like just the wild and crazy action shenanigans.
Sort of, yeah. Like it's not like I'm seeing
you're not getting all the crazy hand movements.
Yeah, like I'm not. There's not a ton of gears flying around the screen. It's like there's a 2D, animated person and a 3D CG model person, and they're just talking.
Yeah.
Like, it is what it is. It's an experimental animation style, but I'm still getting what I need to out of it, and it's not giving me vertigo to watch it. So.
Okay.
Yeah, that's always a good thing. Not getting sick while watching anime.
Honestly, there are some anime that like choose to do specific things with either their art style or choose to do some CG animation. That I'm not usually one to get sick watching things, but at the same time, I'm still like just, I don't know. After a while, it just kind of gets to me, and I'm like, I don't know if I can watch the whole episode.
It's a little uncanny.
Yeah.
Like I'm really happy that Toei Animation actually went ahead and tried this out, because like I wouldn't be against watching other series that tried this out if it was like within the same sort of parameters, because I really don't think it will work super well in an action oriented series.
Yeah.
Like I feel like it definitely has to be something that is far more like reserved and toned down. Something that like isn't just completely buck wild like that.
Well, it does sound interesting. Like just with you talking about it, I'm interested in all of the kind of things you've talked about. It's the the political intrigue and the weird alien shenanigans.
Yeah.
It all sounds really interesting, and the art style that's really interesting. Even though you like didn't fully positively frame it, I'm still interested. So that's interesting.
Like, and that's the thing. Like, I still very highly recommend it, just because of the things that it tries to do, and the way that it, that it approaches the actual like visual medium that's available. Like, because I genuinely haven't seen another show that's tried to do this quite like this has. Like, I've seen a couple 3D CG shows like Knights of Sidonia and things of that nature. That's like a full 3D CG modeled sort of thing. And so it really was kind of like a hybrid between that and just, a traditional 2D animated show. It was fascinating. And I would seriously happily watch another show like this just to see what people can do with
And
this
apparently,
kind of
you're not the only one
format.
that's been recommending this show too. Like Mother's Basement did, and I think a few other people as well. So it's getting at least some decently well received reviews from people.
Yeah, as much as I say like it's a little rough around the end, it's still good. I would still very much say check it out, because it does have a lot of really fascinating discussions about just human nature and the definition of like the progress of mankind, all this sort of shenanigans. It's really cool. I'm actually really happy I watched it for such an inane reason as this is a 3D animation project.
Oh man, would you watch another 3D animation project?
Oh fuck yes.
All
Are
right.
you kidding me? Like, if there was one this season, like that's what I would be watching for this next seasonal cast.
That's kind of interesting. You're now turning into the 3D anime watcher guy. That's interesting.
Listen,
I
it
have
can be
I
done
have
well.
a morbid fascination with it.
It can be done well. I still have a deep-seated place in my heart for Blue Submarine #6.
Oh no.
Oh come on, it was a good show. It was a good show.
Never seen it. So,
Anyway.
So
that's enough of that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. Now, you guys have some decidedly more traditionally animated shows.
Well, you'd be
I hope so.
surprised because, interestingly enough, Tsuki ga Kirei was about half the times 3D.
What?
Oh no.
Wait, no. What?
I mean, I know what you're talking about, but
most scenes in the show, I was like, oh, those poor characters, they're working so hard that they transitioned from 2D to 3D. Almost every single background character for a lot of the like pan-away shots in which they just want to show the front of the school or show the passage of time or something like that, almost undoubtedly, if there's a crowd shot or there's just more than one side character or background character rather, they're 3D models.
Like, oh boy.
Yeah, no, there is.
Are we talking like
of 3D?
We're talking like Mahoka level
audience?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we're talking like that level.
They're not
maybe not that bad.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that the art style that for this show, in which there's a light, they kind of use pastel colors for a lot of things, and then they also have this like light border on all of the characters. It doesn't make the 3D characters look too out of place like Mahoka did, and they're also a little bit more detailed. Like, I mean, it's a simplified art style in the first place for Tsuki ga Kirei. And they actually put faces on them for this show compared to Mahoka. So it doesn't. Here's the thing: is that in any of the scenes of which I see this, it doesn't take me out of the moment necessarily, because it's just not important and it's over as fast as it began, and then we get back to the actual main characters.
Okay.
And I think that's why I was relatively okay with the 3D in the show. Which, by the way, this show is just so feel good. If you wanted a show that is just genuinely a nostalgic callback to how fucking awkward you were the first time you ever dated somebody, or you just want just a nice, sweet romance story that just, I mean, there's a couple of things that occur, but really, there's nothing bad that happens. This is the show for you. It's just so nice, and the story actually genuinely does develop, and I like that. I also like that it's not a show in which you work your way towards the end, and the end goal is that they start dating. It's actually a lot more to it than that, and that's what I appreciated about that in this show. Like,
Nice.
it's a very simple story, but it tells it knows exactly what it's doing, and it tells that story well.
I can super get behind that.
Yeah. I was looking at what some people were saying on Twitter about it, and they were like, "Oh man, this is just so good."
Oh, it is. It really is.
And I mean, it was pretty good from the beginning. I watched the first episode or two, so it's solid. It might be the highest thing rated besides like Boku Hero Academia and Attack on Titan.
Really?
Might be the third highest rated thing this season.
I mean, to be honest, I feel like it deserves it in a sense, because while it's not as like high and mighty like those shows are, like I said, this is just a comfy show, and it knows it's a comfy show, and that's it. But
sometimes that's all you need to do.
But that's the thing, is that it just executes on that so well, and that I think that's what I appreciated about it. It's like it's not too deep or anything like that. I will say there were certain things about it that I actually genuinely enjoyed. There was a lot of use of text messaging or line, which I guess is technically email interaction, but it's basically text messaging in Japan. But yeah, it's a lot of that in a modern world, which was really cool. A lot of their interactions between the two, because they're middle schoolers, they don't have a lot of time to dedicate to themselves. There's a lot of interaction in text messaging, and I like how they develop the story, and I also like how you never really have much of an inner monologue for these characters. Everything that you pick up as far as their emotions go is written on their face, especially whenever they're doing their text messaging. You can very clearly and easily see all of the feelings that they're conveying with just their facial expressions and their reactions to the text messages that they're getting and receiving, that they're sending and receiving. I liked that a lot. This show knows when to shut up and just let its animation and do its work.
Nice.
I like that a lot.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's good to see it consistently, like a strong dedication to very emotive characters.
Yeah, and
that isn't used just for like comedic purposes.
Yes,
and it's interesting too, because there's so much awkwardness throughout all of the interactions with these characters, because they're literally just fumbling around. They have no idea what they're doing when it comes to dating or like getting to know the crush that you have or anything like that. And it's so cute, but because they're literally just fumbling around with that, there's a lot of not just a single emotion written on their face, which I like a lot. It's like you have sadness, but you also have annoyance, like because like for instance, one of the boy does something, and then all of a sudden he suddenly realizes that he messed up, but it's too late to do anything about it now, and so he's sad and he regrets what he did, but at the same time he's just annoyed, and he tries to he doesn't know how to express that, and it's really neat to see that in the show, and once again, no inner monologue. Just it's just done through the animation and just his facial expressions, and a lot of sighing. There's so much like just a lot of that throughout the entire show, because they're just so fucking awkward, but they're adorable. They're just these two adorable little dweebs that just don't know what they're doing.
I'm waiting for the YouTube compilation of Tsuki got Kirei sighing montage.
Oh my gosh, it's most of the show. That would be a really long
Top
video.
10 saddest anime size.
Yeah.
I mean, there were a few things that I didn't like. Very rare. There were only a couple of things I didn't like, and it was mostly that I just didn't like how the guy was approaching things. Just because sometimes I wrote on my notes here, I was like, man, Kotaro is just sometimes a punk ass bitch. It's like you have this girl that's just like sitting there crying, and he just won't hug her, and I'm like, fucking do it, motherfucker. She's crying, comfort her. But once again, it's not bad writing. It's just a situation in which he doesn't know what to do. He's never been in this situation. He's like, I don't, he's freaking out. He's like, I don't know. But oh man, it was really well done, and the backgrounds for the show are actually really pretty. The background characters not so much, but the backgrounds are great. They're these really pretty like hand drawn stuff that fits the tone and theme and style of the show just perfectly.
Oh, okay. So it sounds like it definitely knows what it's doing as far as its animation goes.
Yeah, and I say especially for anybody that has suffered from any type of anxiety disorder or just general anxiety, not necessarily even, a disorder, just, anxiety about a lot of things, or just was really nervous in a relationship, this will fucking bring you back to it. Like, this just shows you that perfectly. There's one of the early scenes, and it's not even a spoiler because I think it's in the first episode. One of the early scenes is that both of the main characters end up at the restaurant at the same time, and they don't know what to do. And so there's just this awkward situation where for 5 minutes, they both won't get up, even though they need to get refills on their drink because they just don't want to interact with each other. Because they're like, oh shit, it's that person from school. I'll keep my head down. And then whenever they end up getting to the drink machine, it just inevitably they end up at the drink machine at the same time. And then it's just an awkward, like, waiting in line, not sure what to do kind of thing.
That is adorable.
Oh my god.
This sounds a little bit too much like my life.
That's
actually.
the thing, is that I've been there. And I'm just like, oh no. But it's done so well and so cutesy that it's not like Watamate, in which it like shoves it down your throat.
Not cringe.
Yeah, it's not cringe. That's yes, exactly. It's not.
It's just
cringe.
awkward.
It's just awkward, and you start smiling a little bit because you're like, I've been there. There's also a lot of moments like whenever they're doing the line thing early on when they're not used to it, where they'll send a message and then they'll think about it and be like, smiley face, just in case they didn't quite get that across. That wasn't an insult towards you, it was just the thing.
I still do that.
I still do too.
Oh.
Your smiley faces feel savage sometimes though, Matt.
Oh my gosh, man.
There's that one that was not supposed to be there. That one was completely what's the word? Unintentional. I don't know how it got there, I promise.
I hope you fucking die. Okay. Smiley. I will say there was one thing about the show that left me a little sad, and it's really the last thing that I just wanted to talk about with the show, because I've said all I needed to say about this. But the one thing is that I a little bit of spoilers, but I'll try not to give away anything. The way that the show ends is that at the very ending of the show it shows a passage of time, and it does this kind of cleverly, in which it shows just snippets of text messaging conversations, from 2 years into the future, 5 years into the future, 7 years into the future, and then it shows a single image of like them at this point, them at this point, them at this point. It was so beautifully done, because what I loved about it is that it showed for these two people, it showed that any type of relationship, whether it's a friendship or dating or anything like that, it'll be trying sometimes, and it will not always be happy. And I like that it switched between here's a happy one, here's a sad one, here's one where they've obviously been fighting for a couple days. And it was really well done, and I liked that a lot. But because it was so well done, I was like, fuck, just fucking animate this. Like, give me a season 2 where they're no longer middle schoolers, where they're in high school, they're in college. Like, give me more. But I think it was so well, like, they encompassed everything that they wanted to say within the show. I don't think they'll ever do it. And it made me sad, because I was like, but that would have been, that moment right there, that text message conversation right there, that's like easily 3 episodes of content that would have been perfect to like actually see animated. But
that's awesome.
Oh,
I can't wait to watch that, because I watched the first 3 and I was like, oh, this is good. Like,
I always try to pick a comfy show for every season because I just like every now and then to de-stress with just something comfy. This was the epitome of comfy for me because it's just like I've been there, oh gosh, I've been there, but at the same time they just do it so well and so nice, in such a nice way that it never comes off as cringe. It's just cute. It's just adorably cute to see these two fucking awkward kids trying to work their way through this.
I could have definitely used that earlier this season. I should have watched that.
Also, they do sell the squeezies with the purchase of the Blu-rays, and I'm getting one. I want a squeezy like that girl had, where you can just. Apparently, it feels amazing to just basically use it as a stress ball and just squeeze it whenever you're nervous.
Okay.
I want one.
All right.
So
So bad.
will you please just briefly contextualize this and just tell us that the squeezy is a stuffed animal?
No, it's her boyfriend. No, yeah, it's a stuffed animal that she has. Very early on in the show, you see that she gets anxious very easily, and in fact to an extreme extent. And I liked that during those moments in which you see her having some extreme anxiety, they dissect that well. And once again, with very little dialogue in general throughout the show. I like that a lot. But I liked that they showed the anxiety that she experiences, and they show that she typically attempts to deal with it with just this small little thing, her small little stuffed animal that she's had for however long she's had. But sometimes it's not enough, and I like that. But also, just in general, her stuffed animal was fucking adorable.
I mean, yeah.
It
I
really
want a
was.
squeezy. That girl needs her squeezy. Do not take it away from her.
Do not take it away from her. Please don't. But yeah, no, this is one that I highly recommend for anybody. Even people that don't typically like slice of life shows, you might find something nice in this. Especially if you've ever dated, like if you've ever had that first dating relationship that you just didn't have it figured out going into it.
Yeah.
So anyways,
Okay.
yeah,
Wow.
Suki.
So
That is pretty Tsuki got amazing. Okay, that was a failed pun, but
what's
whatever.
the matter with you?
Well, I just feel like we needed a better transition, so I
Right,
tried.
and Matt doesn't get to talk about his show. That's the end of the podcast.
All right. Well, shit.
What so I actually don't remember what you were gonna watch this season.
All
I
right.
legitimately don't.
So, here's what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
I'm gonna talk about recreators.
Oh,
And now we're done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, recreators.
Which is one of the shows that we can't talk entirely about because it's too core.
It's still going, but I was definitely not going to watch any of the other stuff that I wanted to watch. So, just because, oh my god, I would have probably not have been fun.
Oh yeah, because you got started on like a couple of other ones that just weren't that great.
Yeah, I watched a couple other shows and I was just like, oh man, I don't want to go through this.
Yeah, Machiavellianism and Clockwork
Oh,
Planet
God.
and
You started that?
I started Machiavellianism. I did 2 episodes before I got sick of that. Clockwork Planet I completely skipped on. I was just like, nope, that's not happening. I could have watched Seikaisuru, but that didn't even get good until episode like 10.
Yeah, and I think we all kind of
so.
just avoided Sagrada Reset, didn't we? Like we started it, but
I started it and I got sick of that after about 3 episodes.
I'm waiting for it to build up to a nice ripe 26 episodes.
All right.
and Alice
I
to
hate myself.
Zaroku? I can't speak Japanese.
I got bored of that
Alice
after
and
4
Zaroku.
episodes. So it turned into like some kind of slice of life thing until the very end, apparently.
Which maybe
So-
I might enjoy, but yeah, I don't think that's especially not for what it started as.
I was gonna say it's such a weird tonal shift.
I
from the
know.
first Episode.
It's weird. And then I definitely wasn't watching Grand Blue Fantasy or anything like that. So I was just like, I'm just gonna take the hit
Wait.
here.
Man, was Grand Blue this season?
Yeah, it was.
Wow, that feels like an eternity ago.
I know, doesn't it? This season felt like an eternity. But
Good Lord.
yeah, so that's why I just decided to take matters to my own hands and let's talk about recreators.
Yeah, recreate our perceptions,
Which
buddy.
I'm very excited for you to talk about this because I actually haven't watched any of this show yet, and that is a failure on my part because I keep hearing awesome stuff.
Yeah, I have not watched enough of this.
I'm actually really sad that more people aren't watching it. I'm also like kind of a little upset because a lot of people have well, okay, so let me tell you a story. You guys already know the story, but so when I watched the first episode of Recreators, I opened up the first episode and I almost dropped the show 10 seconds in when I saw that the director was Eero Aoki.
Hmm.
Eero Aoki is an interesting director because he directed Out of Noah Zero, which everyone knows that he directed. And that's not because his directing is bad.
Everybody Alda knows?
Um, and now Kyle's banned from talking on the podcast.
Sorry. Please continue.
That's a good one. So everyone really liked Out of Noah Zero. Like, okay, let me correct that. Everyone did like Out of Noah Zero. It was a very good show. Basically, what happened was that it was an interesting show with an interesting premise. Basically, space military. Think about it like that.
Okay.
And basically, what happened was that the show was super exposition heavy. And Eero Aoki, as a director, does an okay job. But every time he gets on the jointed with the scriptwriter, anytime that happens, which he's doing for Recreators as well, anytime that happens, suddenly every scene has like 100 lines. Like, it feels like everything is explained in the dialogue.
Oh, wow.
Like, it's literally like and that's what happened in Now Noah Zero. It was kind of a bad show anyway. There was some cool stuff, but it didn't go in a very good direction. And basically, yeah, it was just complete exposition. Everything was explained. Anything that could have been interesting was explained to make it not interesting. And it just made it feel like you were seeing the same episode over and over again. And so that's the reason when I saw his name on Recreators, I was like, oh no, it's this guy.
Fool me once.
And I almost dropped the show 10 seconds in, but I am glad that I did not do that. Now, I will say that Recreators does have a lot of people complain about the same sort of thing. There's a lot of exposition. There's a lot of dialogue. There's a lot of just, sometimes things don't even happen in the episode. Characters just talk to each other. But that is perfectly okay for Recreators. There's a lot of characters, for one. There's more than just 3. There's a lot of interesting interwoven meta-narratives. There's a lot of things that we can only learn by the characters talking because they're in this world that they're not familiar with. So there's a lot of things about their old worlds that can't even be shown because we're not there. They could flashback to it, but that would get old.
Yeah.
So a lot of that stuff is just explained via the dialogue, and it works for the most part. It doesn't feel boring at any point in time, to me, at least. Some people, I guess, would argue otherwise. And I feel like every episode I'm learning more about these characters and learning more about their experiences with the world, and also with how they're combating their current situation of being in this world, and also the fact that they're trying to stop another character from a world that is trying to basically destroy society, destroy the creators of these works is their end goal. if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what Recreators is all about. It's about characters coming in to this world, and they're trying to stop this person from destroying all of this media that made this world, the human world, would be the easiest way to explain it, to make that, that makes it thrive. So they're trying to stop the destruction of that. What makes Recreators really interesting is there's a lot of characters that are not exactly they're kind of since they're not bound to the human world, there's some characters that are characters that are more attached to it, characters that are also less attached to it. So that kind of creates this interesting dynamic. And some people care about society, but some people only care about, or some of these creations only care about certain parts of it. Other parts they don't care about. Leads to some interesting interactions about not, I don't want to say morality, but it talks about like you never know like if a character is good or bad. They're actually well-written characters.
A lot of gray for some of these characters.
Yes, that would be the way to put it. That's what I was looking for. Recreators continues to get interesting. Like that's just kind of like the premise is what I just described. That's the premise of the show. There's a lot more interesting because there's more characters that keep getting interjected into the world. They're working with the creators, and the government comes in, like trying to stop this destruction of the creators, which are just everyday people. They're just writers, artists, whatever.
Yeah, just the people that have made some type of creation or character that's within a medium.
Yeah, and so the show starts going into that a little bit. It goes into like, okay, there are these people interacting with their own creations, which that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's what initially sold me whenever you guys first talked about it, is that I was like, that in itself, that like stranger than fiction kind of thing, where it's like all of a sudden the creation is interacting with its creator. That's super cool to me.
Yeah, and it gets so interesting because there's a point to where they have to start, not to spoil too much, but they have to start like getting the creators together because they're trying to figure out how to deal with all these weird occurrences happening in this world. Like apparently, not blowing up a building with a heart maho shoujo girl is apparently not acceptable in this world.
Who would think?
Yeah, who would have thought? And so they have to like get them all together, and then the government eventually intervenes, and they're like, hey, the world's gonna die if we don't protect these people, so we gotta help them. But this is really weird because this is not a thing that ever is even supposed to happen.
Right, there's no plan for this. The government isn't prepared.
Yeah.
Like, what's our Maho Shoujo contingency plan?
Gosh, that sounds like Mega Tokyo.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, shit, Precure actually happened. What do we do?
Yeah, and you can imagine that the government just is like, what the fuck do we even do about this? Like, this doesn't even seem real. Like, and then at first they're like that. They're like, well, this isn't even real. Like, but they're like, well, I guess it's happening. I mean, they obviously have seen the proof that it's happening, so they're just like, we got to work together with the creators and the creations, and it turns into this like entire ordeal where there's all these people from all these different segments. You've got the creations, you've got the main character. He's like a creator of himself. He is like a budding artist, but his art was never popular. It got like 30 views on Pixiv or whatever. There's him, so he kind of feels disheartened by seeing all these creators around him that have been successful, and he wasn't successful. And there's a whole like underlying story with him as well, like how he deals with like the failure of his creation and all of this stuff. And there's a lot more spoiler stuff that I'm not going to go into. But there's a lot of that. And then, you've got the creators themselves. They're trying to deal with the business side of things, because the only way it's eventually learned that creations are perpetuated by their popularity. That's what's dictated by who's coming into the world. So basically only the popular characters from these works, which it's funny because there's one character that is introduced in the story that he's a side character. He's not even like the main character.
But he was just a really popular character.
Yeah, they just liked him. So he just comes into the story. And so like so they have to kind of like work with the government, and the businesses, like the producers and the publishing companies work with the government to kind of stop this. And it's kind of interesting. There's a whole lot more they could go into with it in these 9 episodes. And overall, it's just really cool. Like there's cool action. Like the dialogue is super intriguing. Like every interaction with each of the characters is just extremely interesting.
Yeah, because you said that where these creations just have a completely different mindset and worldview. You'd gone over this before whenever you guys were explaining it to me. It's like the video game character will be like, oh, that's fine, well, I'll just die and respawn. And so they may act accordingly, not realizing that that's not necessarily how things work in the real world.
Yeah.
And then you have other characters that just may think, oh, well, the city will just rebuild itself after we get done battling, and then that's not how things work. And so there's a lot of like interaction where all these characters come from games and TV and movies and different things like that. That just because of the way that's how that show, or that's how that medium works, that's also how these characters think. And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, there are definitely a lot of moments like that. And which is also really cool. And and one of the big things about the show is that anytime there's action, the music is just freaking kick-ass. Like it is awesome. Like the music is it's Hiroyuki Sawano. It is it kicks up a notch anytime like shit gets real, basically.
Yeah.
Like the music just starts kicking on, and it's
the same guy that did Shinjeki no Kyojin, Awari no Seraph, Guilty Crown.
Kill la Kill, stuff like that.
Oh yeah. Fuck, I love that Kill la Kill soundtrack.
Yeah, I only saw like the first 2 episodes, but I will definitely attest to that, in that it kicks it up like a lot of notches.
He's so good at just like intensity.
For a show that is like mostly dialogue, and then suddenly there'll just be like a 3-minute action scene, and it's just like it feels so rewarding, because you see this discussion and it's building. You can see it building. The characters are slowly getting more agitated or whatever, and then the music kicks on and the action it goes crazy. It's a great show. Like I think everyone should at least be watching it a little bit. I guess some people don't like dialogue, but I like dialogue. I'm not a huge complaint of dialogue as long as it's doing something and isn't repetitive. And yeah, Recreators is a show that is pretty amazing, and there's a lot of people out there that really like it.
Yeah, I was looking at the stats on AnyChart. It's currently, for 2017, it's the 6th most popular one for spring, and it's the 21st highest rated one for all of 2017 so far.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
That's for AnyChart. Now, granted, that's only for AnyChart, but that's really interesting. Like that's super cool.
Yeah. And of course, it's co-written with the guy from Black Lagoon, and it's also an original work in general.
Oh yeah, it's not an adaptation.
It's not an adaptation of anything. It's just original.
Yeah, nope.
So, which is also really cool. It's really nice to see a successful original anime, because it just means like, yes, it's finally happening.
Yeah, it's like, oh, these can go good places.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, shit. This original creator has only done Black Lagoon, Bikini Warriors, which I'm sure is probably not that great of a series, and Recreators. So like, that's really great that it's just like, no, these are the only things that I've done, and both Black Lagoon and Recreators are apparently just solid hits.
Mm-hmm. It's absolutely amazing. Recreators is an exciting watch. The most recent episode was a recap episode that they somehow turned a recap episode into the most interesting thing. I don't like.
I didn't think that those words would escape your
I
mind.
know.
The only recap episode I've ever liked was the Kill la Kill one, and that was because it was 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and then they just went into the regular episode.
This is I almost struggle to call this a recap. It's clearly a recap episode, like it's just explaining some of the basic plot points. But there's also a lot of interesting moments. Just one of the characters is narrating over it, and she interacts her own viewpoint on how she viewed everything in the series. So she puts little twists on things, like oh, like one of the scenes, she's like, this is where I saved the world, and she's like in this weird like bikini outfit, that not like a weird bikini outfit, but it's like a battle mage instead of like a normal cloaked robed mage. And like there's like she really puts herself on this pedestal, like she's like, yeah, I totally saved everybody, it was so cool. Like I was so cool. And she's like, oh, okay, I can't actually say that. They're retconning that in the script, so we're gonna actually play that back how it was now.
You like fourth wall break a little bit? That's awesome.
Yeah, there's some fourth wall breaking that goes on. There's a whole segment they talk about the main villain in the show. They're just like, yeah, she's really hard to animate. Her hair like is really hard to do.
I saw that on Twitter earlier. Yeah,
that's from the recap episode.
Where it's like
absolutely amazing.
It's like the animators are saying she's really hard to animate, and then they're like, also from behind, she just looks like a bag of hair. I was like, that's so fucking funny.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Oh, and there's another part, like she starts playing the ending song, and then the narrator, which is one of the characters from the show, she starts singing it, and it's like really horrible, and she's like, okay, yeah, we're gonna play the rest of that later. And there's just all sorts of clever stuff, and they're like, oh, by the way, this recap episode was not because that we fucked up on the budget or whatever. This was planned from the beginning. So if people think that the anime industry is in decline because of this, or that recap episodes are lazy, that's not the case here. Like, it was just the most bizarre recap episode I've ever freaking seen.
That's how you do a recap episode, because that's just immensely entertaining.
Yeah, even one of the voice actress that was narrating it, she's like, I saw the script for this, and I was like, what is even happening? Like, this is the most bizarre thing I've ever done. But she's like, by the end, I had fun with it.
Yeah, it sounds like some straight fooly shit.
Oh man,
almost.
Like that. It's almost worth watching Recreators just for the recap episode. Like, it was the most interesting, and there's a lot of people that were super mad about the recap episode. They were like, "Oh, it wasn't even a good recap episode," or it's a recap episode in the middle of the series. Can't believe they wasted a whole episode on this garbage.
Oh.
And I'm like, guys, did you not watch it? Did you skip it? Because this is hilarious. And it's like right in the middle of the climax of the show too. So if you were marathoning it, it would just be right in the middle.
Oh god.
That's
like
funny.
Before we get to the real shit, we're doing this. Great show.
That's fantastic. Now
all the praise that people are giving, it's awesome. All the praise that it's getting, like Mother's Basement did a whole 30-minute video on it, or 20 minutes or something.
Damn.
And it's great. Like it deserves all the praise it gets.
good.
I'm gonna have to go watch that now.
It's exciting. I love it.
Awesome. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to talk about? Like just a last second throw to like I don't know, anything else, Soccer Quest or something?
I can't wait to watch Dive this season.
Oh, great.
Yeah, the sequel season to Free looks fantastic. Really strange that they decided to open up with a new crew. Okay, well, I guess we'll catch everybody for the next season then.
Yeah.
See ya.
Okay. See y'all later.
Bye.